praise. Let me bring back in my guests, Federal Executive Clemency Attorney Tammy Allison and Deputy Public Defender for Los Angeles County, Philip Dubé. Philip, I want to start with you because I think that is one of the areas where I think the state doubled down. They not only have the stabbing, which he argued was with ill will, and they can find that there, but then he doubled down with the fact that she chose not to call 911 and let him lay there and bleed out, even though in her mind there was a chance that he might still be alive and could be saved. Your thoughts?
Well, I come across this issue all the time with clients, not just in the homicide context, but anytime they're up to no good, where they have no idea at the time that what they have done under the circumstances may have in fact have been lawful. So for example, when somebody acts in self-defense, they really need to consult with an attorney to find out if what they did at the time was lawful. At that moment in time, when they're using the deadly force, they're not presented with the elements of a defense. They're not presented with the elements of a crime. They're just acting under the circumstances in a way that can try to get them out of that mess. They don't know that they might be able to say something helpful to the cops, you know, to 911 dispatch, to paramedics. They have no idea. So instead, they're just trying to cover their tracks. Unfortunately, it gives off this aura of consciousness of guilt to prosecutors and to jurors, and of course to the victim's family, if you will. The fact that she did absolutely nothing other than try to protect her own skin. But we'll see what a jury does. On another note, I cannot stand it when jurors nod with me during my closing argument, because invariably the dreaded nodders are the ones who always convict. Something happens in the jury room where they get persuaded to go the other way. They seem easily influenced during argument, and then that translates to more easy influence in the deliberation room. I dread the nodders. It's just me.
That's an interesting little point. Now, Tammy Allison, you know, he makes a great point about what the argument was regarding what happened there between these two people and the fact that there might be some explanation. I think the defense did a fairly decent job of explaining perhaps her actions. But again, you still get bogged down in the idea that there were all these lies. It's the lies that I think ultimately might end up doing her in.
The lies, Michael. Yes, so many of the lies. And the fact that she testified in her own defense, and, you know, the prosecutor, you know, interjecting and trying to clarify some of the statements that she made, especially whenever she testified that her face was being slammed into the stove and which hand did she use to grab the knife. Then when we look at where the drawer was and the testimony from the victim's daughter stating that those drawers were decorative and she never recalled there even being knives in there, that all plays into those 11 hours that she chose to wait before calling for help. And, you know, I think the jury is going to be looking at it as if she knew what she did, and that's why she was trying to tamper with some things and possibly move the knives to a different drawer to match her story, as opposed to her just being shocked from acting in self-defense.
Yeah, and again, the standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. So there's always that in a defense attorney's cap, and they're going to need it in this case. All right, they are deliberating. Deliberating clock is at about 50 minutes right now. The judge did say they will deliberate till about 8 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Coming up next, we are in verdict watch for the kitchen knife murder trial. So we asked, if you were a juror, how would you vote? We're going to hear your answers coming up next right here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. It is time now for today's Talkback segment. Each day we post a question on Court TV's social media pages. We gather your comments and questions and then respond right here on the show. We are in verdict watch for the kitchen knife murder trial. So we asked you guys, if you were a juror, how would you vote? Guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of manslaughter, or not guilty of anything at all? Still with me, Federal Executive Clemency Attorney Tammy Allison and Deputy Public Defender for Los Angeles County, Philip Dubé. All right, guys, our first comment comes from Ann. She says, manslaughter. She seems to have given up almost, and I find that more consistent with irrational behavior before and after the tragedy than tears on the stand. She does not look sympathetic on the stand, though, and I think the jury will give second-degree murder. Okay, so Ann feels like it's a manslaughter case, but she says that she thinks this jury will give second-degree murder. You guys have rung in on that already. I think, Philip, you were clear you think this might end up being a second-degree murder case. Some of my colleagues feel like manslaughter, regardless, doesn't fit this case. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know that they really established enough of a heat of passion, sudden quarrel to use deadly force, right? Assuming they have, then maybe. Listen, you're asphyxiating someone, you're cutting off their airway, they can't breathe. Somehow she managed to get a big enough second wind to reach for that knife from that faux finish drawer, to stab him. And, let's be honest here, you never know what a jury is going to do. But ultimately, if a jury believes that there was a sudden quarrel or some type of heat of passion, then it would justify downgrading it to manslaughter. Now, if they decide to go with an implied malice theory of murder, it doesn't mean she had the intent to kill. It just means she committed such a dangerous act to human life and disregarded the dangers of it that the law sort of implies that intent to kill, and the jury might feel bad and feel like they have no alternative.
All right, our next comment, guys, comes from David, and he says she's changing her story, and no contemporary mention of self-defense is a guilty verdict to me. Her violent criminal history should have been admitted. That's completely relevant, especially when she was on probation for assault at the time. Defense was painting a picture of a peaceful mom. Now, he's talking about an incident she had with a police officer that did not make it into the case, so we'll leave that off to the side. But Tammy, there's two ways that this jury could look at it and decide to let her walk, at least on the more serious charges. That's the justification that this was in fact self-defense, and there's some that could fly. There's also excusable homicide, where the killing occurs by accident, misfortune, in the heat of passion, or upon any sudden and sufficient provocation. So they could go there as well, thinking that this guy, I think the defense did a decent job of painting this victim as a little bit of a monster. I think this jury could certainly buy the fact that there may have been some aggressive behavior by him the night of this stabbing. Your thoughts on that aspect?
Michael, I think the jury can take that into consideration, that he could have been the person that even started the aggressive behavior, and she's the one that just happened to finish it because she was desperately trying to save her life. But I think a lot of the testimony that we heard coming from the prosecution was very damaging to the defense's argument that she was acting in self-defense completely, where the jury could possibly find a not guilty verdict, or the heat of passion. It kind of chips away at that whenever you think about the faux finish drawer, like Philip said, that faux finish drawer that was not there before, as the daughter of the victim testified to. So I'm not sure if it's strong enough for self-defense or for heat of passion. So the jury might come back saying that there was no doubt raised and find the defendant here guilty.
All right, well, thanks so much to Tammy Allison and Philip Dubé for being with me tonight. Always appreciate your presence and your patience tonight as well. Coming up next, we're going to review the top 3 takeaways from the courtroom in Orlando, Florida today. Stay right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.